Yo, it's round 23, team list, 5 rounds to go, and Latrell Mitchell on the screen. That's exciting. Anyway, we get into that first one. Storm versus Broncos. Pappen, the Schnackenhausen, unlikely to kick goals, so just be aware of that. He is at a reasonable price, but without the goals will be a tough little catch. Now, Howard's still a cheap guy that's probably going to be up and down. Munster's a really fun pick this week, and then Wishart I still think is by far the best cash down type of player. Are you going to take a flyer on Stefano this week, given he's gone back-to-back good scores? Is he back, and can he do it consistently? I'm not sure. Harry Grant's still a great pick. Eli Katoa in the same boat there with Trent Liero returning in this one as the only real change to this side. Now, Trent had a bit of a shocker and is also at somewhat of an okay price after his drop. His decent drop in price after that 19. So that side there, it's a lot of solid with Munster being the best pick in this one. Now for the Broncos, they have an interesting run, some tougher games. I think the Storm twice. Be interesting to see if the Storm players do rest in that final round. But the Broncos here, Reece Walsh still at a very reasonable price. If you want to jump in under 600k, he can do a job. And in a wing fullback position that's pretty rough at the moment, he's got some legs in there that can do a good job. He's missed enough games to have plenty left in the tank and plenty left to prove after a very, very tough start to the season. For Payne Haas, he does return, which was expected with the leg issue that he did have, the infection. Paddy Carrigan in there with a good opportunity to get big minutes and score really well also. The interchange there, you've got Jaden Hunt, Ben Tulty, and Kobe Hetherington to go with Billy Walters. So very, very clear that there's minutes to go around for Payne Haas and for Carrigan to finish off this year. Very, very good picks. And the outside backs had a good game last week in Cobbo, Stags, and Mariner. Going to be hard to see them doing that against the Storm in this one. So very, very hard selection to go into those guys. And with Xavier Willison out, that's where those minutes do come from. Knights and Panthers. Dan Gagai, a really, really fun pick. And the only problem, I think, with any of these attacking style players for the Knights this week is that they come up against the Panthers in really, really good form. Now, they were looking to dominate on the weekend and fell away a bit, but they should still be a tough out in this one for the Knights. But overall, in saying that, I do think Dan Gagai is still at a really reasonable price with goal kicking and should continue to score well like he has. Now, in this one, we're not probably hoping for the world, but it might be a 40-odd. And then in other weeks, could be a really fun pick there. And so him at centre is going to be an interesting one. I'll get into the numbers in the best buys a little bit later on. Bradman Best does return, which is going to be fun to see, and is definitely a point of difference type play. But Jake Arthur is going to be the 6 here with Jack Cogger in the 7. They've changed his position a few times with Hastings having it, and then changed last game and into a change in this one here. You've got Jacob Saifidi there paired with Leo Thompson, so a few guys back on deck. And you see Tyson Frizzell there on the bench. Phoenix Crossland's been scoring okay in the sort of low 40s there. Kaipis Paul, one of my better picks of the week. And then Jermaine McEwen, still a really solid cash down guy, but more if you need the cover in edge. If you don't, then at a similar price you can get Wishart, who I think should have probably that little bit more upside. But if Jermaine can get good minutes, which I'm fully expecting that he does, then there should be sort of a 40-odd average across this time. And that's about it for the Knights boys. On the other side, the Panthers guys there, Dylan Edwards still probably overall the best wing fullback pick at the moment, outside of the guys that we do have in JC and even Carraz, these types of guys. So he's still on that list. Case McLean's having a pretty good little run at the moment. Brian To'o 484 will be interesting. We'll speak about him later. Cleary, it's him, it's JC, it's these type of guys, the best captaincy options this week, so you'll have him in your team. Now, unfortunately, we do lose Isaiah Yeo. He's not in the reserves either. Hopefully, it's just a 1 or 2 week type of thing and doesn't extend any further, because I think we can cop that. Whereas if it's like three or more, then it could be a tough one. But we know with these subluxations in the shoulder, it can be pretty tough to work out when they can return. And so if he happens to sort of take 2 weeks rest, that will be some really good healing time, and hopefully he can come back and score really well and still play big minutes. At the moment, though, if he was just to return after 1 week, there is some worries that he doesn't perform up to his best. And I suppose right now we probably just at least get a 50 out of him would be great. great. Now, for their forwards, guys like Lindsay Smith are going to be fun to look at. Isaiah Papali'i, I really want him to be back because at 580 odd, he's awesome. Lindsay's at 650 and should play some good minutes. And it'll be interesting to see if IPAPS does sort of play 20 on an edge, or if it's going to be like a 40 or 50 thing in the middle, then it's probably less interesting, especially when you've got Liam Henry in there, Scott Sorensen returning, and Eisenhuth. They've got three guys that can play really good, heavy middle minutes if they need to. These guys aren't 20-minute forwards, right? And Sorensen will be working his way back into that edge position, which might push IPAP away from where I want him to be personally. Now for the Raiders up against the Durers up against the Eagles there, Timoko is just one of the better outside back picks right now. The unfortunate thing is this team with a pretty significant resting risk, and they do have a bye next week, so it's hard to jump into many of these type of players. Jamal Fogarty coming off a low one. I expect him to return back to full health and back to full points this week after the 28. Joe Tarpanay, where are those minutes going to be? I think this is, if they happen to be in this clash, I think that the minutes should be there with the bench that they're throwing out there. And I haven't mentioned this yet, but I do think that very clearly, you saw it last week in a closer matchup, but when you've got Hosking sort of playing 59 minutes, you've got Simi Sasangi coming on and covering the rest of those, that only leaves the two middles there in Morgan Smithies and Atta Mariota to cover the three positions in Papali'i, in Tarpanay, and in Horsburgh as well. So that is where I think the minutes help will come for Joe Tarps. Hosking over the next couple of weeks, either this week or next, can be a sell and likely won't see the massive minutes that we want from him going forward. And Hunter Young coming off a lower game, but in the wet, expect this game to be much better for him. Now, this Manly team was a bit interesting with Tommy Turbo going back to fullback, which at times is going to be fun, but other times we're going to love or we're going to miss having that centre base. Now, Tommy Talau's actually been named in the centres, and I fully expect that Tommy ends up playing that left wing, which he did really, really well last year, and Ruben goes back to right centre playing with Saab like he did for the majority of the year. I don't see any reason for that to change. So let's see if that actually plays out. But it's weird for them to actually name it this way. Maybe it was just easier on the on the list and a bit lazy for him to just go Tommy straight in for Turbo, Tommy Talau that is, and then Tommy Turbo to go back in place of Lehigh with the injury. So wonder how this is going to work, but we'll find out very, very soon. Jazz still 6 in 9. Michael Cheeks, the old Cheekham, gets his spot back in the edge. And we know he can come out and score well. I don't know if he will play massive minutes, but also it's just a 1 week thing with Burbo being out with the concussion. So that's the news on that game. For the Dragons and the Sharky boys, Lycan King Tongia keeps his spot, which is great news for myself, given I'll be looping with him and with Ruben Garrick in that first one, as my first loopers, most likely. We'll have to see how it all plays out, but that's that situation there for the Dragons. No one else there in the back 7 is of any interest to us there regardless. And then Damien Cook, a really nice score last week. You've got him that you can continue to do some looping with and playing if you need to, like we saw last week. And Michael Molo, I think, will continue to score pretty well and had a lower tackle game on the weekend, but it was played in the absolute wet, and there's room for him to improve on his games. And I actually rated him last week. I think he's a really good pick again. If you need to go down into that mid-400s range, he is very, very close to the best in the business down there. For the Sharkies, now, Talakai keeps his spot. There's some word of like Hiroti being around and back, and you can see him in the 19, but yeah, it looks like they're just going to stick with Talakai for now. Atkinson is in the 14 there, and Jesse Colquhoun is out of this one. Now you're seeing Hamlin Uele, Hazleton, and Rudolph in that interchange with Atkinson there as the utility man. In terms of buyers, there's guys like Ramian, guys like Mulatalo, point of difference guys. They still have a solid run, the Sharkies, and still a buy remaining. So thinking about Nickera, about Blake Brayley, about Adam Fanua-Blake, just think about them with a grain of salt, just because they do have that one game that they'll miss. Outside of that, I think they'll be fighting tooth and nail to get close to the top 4, which I think they're a really good shout for. Dolphins and Roosters. You see Nafahu coming in for Herbie Farnworth, which is sad to not see Herbie's name there when the Dolphins are named. What a gun. Isaiah Katoa, I think, hopefully goes back into a better scoring effort in this one. You see Lem and Oren both on their edges, and Fine Fuyaki has actually been named on the bench, which is the big news here. So we're thinking maybe in the next couple of weeks he'd return, and he's back a little bit early. And don't be startled, let's say, if Lem ends up on the bench for Finn or Keely, one of those two. So we'll see how that one plays out. I'm expecting Kurt Donahue to play massive minutes again, and he's just been a jet at the moment. So impressive, and will continue to be, in my opinion. He's a terrific pick this week, and has been every other week since. Been hoping for the demise, but it's just not happening. Now, on the Roosters side of things, guys like Nwangini Tawaze at a really reasonable price now, so it's like he's not going to go crazy big drops in price each week. Teddy, we're hoping for a big week at some point. Sammy Walker is like the fun pick in that near 600k range. Nufahu White, Watson, we're just hoping they continue to do solidly. Crichton, still a decent pick. And then Siwa Wong at a reasonable price there at 560 odd. We'll discuss him in further detail, but he should play the 80 minutes and can continue to go back to where he was before the injury. That's the hope anyway. Coming off a 35 in the wet, hopefully he can go back to some better scoring near the 50 mark, which we know he can do. And Felice Kafusi's out as well for the Finns there. Now the Doggies, there's a bit of news that Galvin might be in doubt, and he still might be. So they've named him for now, and that's just one to keep an eye on over the week. Didn't score super well. Just be aware with him. If you were looking at buying him, there's potential for him to be in doubt and out. Karaz continues to be named at 1. He did change where he ended up attacking in the centres, and we saw Stephen Crichton swinging out the back, and looks like that'll continue happening. It seemed to work well for a couple of their tries, and I think they'll keep experimenting and do some things with that. Now, Karaz, hopefully, we just know he's got upside. So up against a Warriors team that struggled a bit, he could definitely come out and do well. Rinakama looks like he's got this spot and is doing a solid job at it as well. Burton's going to be so up and down. Preston, a really safe bet. Kickow, up and down, it looks like, definitely. And that's about all in that side of relevance. Max King will just be a really solid mid-pick. Now, in the other side here, the big news, I suppose, is that Fisher Harris is still not in the starting side, named in the reserves, and these calf things can really linger, so I'm slightly worried about him. Now, in the forwards, guys like Jackson Ford, I still think is a pretty interesting kind of pick there, and the big news out of this one is that Wade Egan still not named, and I don't know if they've said anything on him here. No, Laban's done. Yeah, Fisher Harris trying to come back from the calf injury. Chanel Stavita is back from his. But I do think Jackson Ford still a really nice pick at an okay price there. You've got Halsema and Capewell back together. The interchange just generally means good minutes for Clark again, which is nice. When Fish does come back, Ford becomes a little less important, but generally overall, I think there's good minutes there to replace that like Mitch Barnett role. And Samuel Healy is like a cash down. Will he keep the spot when Egan's back? And we just don't know, really. So it'd be a big punt, and with limited trades, it's going to be tough. Taintul Picky keeps that role at fullback with Charnsigle Klukstad in the centres. And I think he's a really solid guy as well. But again, they could change this at the drop of a hat, so it'd be very, very tough to jump in on that. And then Watini Zalesniak will have the role for the rest of the year, and he's a very, very safe for that role. Less safe on scoring, but week to week proposition in this Warriors side. And they need to start winning games, and they've got a pretty nice draw. So DWZ can be that cash down that you may want. For the Titans and the Bunnies, we don't see Keanu Keeney. There was a small chance that he could be back in this team, but I feel like if he does return, it'll be through Cup anyway. But looking at this side, there's still no Tino, which is expected, but just something to keep a note of. Mofot and Jamin Jolliffe, both really solid options, and Chris Randall returns on the edge, and I think he can still come back and do a really good job here. They have a nice run to finish off the year, and I don't mind Chrissy Randall at all. Both are more a terrific and probably close to the best centre replacement if you need one for Herbie, and then Cleese Haas had a really good game on the weekend as well. Now, if you're looking at these guys, Chris Randall, I think Fermor has the safest role and is most likely to go in the 50s. I think Randall has the second safest role because when Tina returns, it won't affect him. I then think Jolliffe is going to be the safest scorer week to week for now. Mofot's going to be a little bit all over the shop, but when Tino comes back, I think it affects him the least minutes wise. But I think Joel's been awesome and is one to monitor with. But Jaden Campbell, ultimately the guy you want in this side, and then Brimson going to be up and down. But games like this against South, he can come out and have a really good game as well. Jai Gray in the 1, and what we do see is Shaq Mitchell and Latrell Mitchell in the reserve. So this Latrell situation here is very, very interesting. Now, if he happens to play this week, he is the guy that a lot of us will want, but price-wise, it makes it very difficult. The following week, if people have trades, if he is back, clear and ready to go, the Souths actually have a decent little draw. 1 bye remaining, which is tough, but you could get 3 out of the 4. If let's just say he's back properly next week, you could get 3 out of 4 really good weeks out of Latrell, who has the potential to be one of the best scorers in the game. So that's some big news there. And then Brandon Smith in the 16 jersey. Hopefully can see him get through this game and get some decent minutes. Jamie Humphries named in the 7. Hopefully actually plays this week. And Talis Duncan still keeping that spot in the centre, sadly. Ewan Aiken still at a reasonable price if you want to jump on him. And looks like his spot is pretty safe in this side, with no one looking to come and take that position from him. And Lewis Dodd and Ryan Gray both out of this one. Phil Sami out for the Titans, with Jojo Fafita and Cam Pereira taking those spots there in the centre and the wing. And then the final one there, Eels are up against the Cows. And I do expect Joe Ash to have a much better game than his 20 last week, albeit against the Storm compared to Cows. It makes sense. Not a big take, Jamie. Sam Rani in there in the centres for his boy on the other side. Who's going to be out there? Shawnee Russell, that's right. And then Sam Tulvadi is out as well. Kelmar sitting on the bench with Matt Dury, Moretti, Talon De Silva. So still heaps of minutes available for guys like Hopgood. If you're interested, going down that route. Very, very cheap and should be somewhere in the 40s. Safely, with upside, right? We know that. Charlie Guymer, really solid pick at the moment still. Jack Williams in there as well. But outside of that, Mitch Moses you could take a punt on, like Mitch said, and I hope you guys like that video there that we had with Mitchy Boy on the channel this morning. For the Cows, Griffin Neem and Robert Darby are out of this one. I think Griffin ended up with a suspension, was it? Yeah, so Laybutt moves to the wing there. What do we got? Viliami Vialea, Foot is returning, McKaylee, Clifford, Jason Taumalolo, so a bit improving there. Jeremiah Nanai goes back to the edge, and we know he can have fun games, but all of these guys do miss out, unfortunately, on that final game. Drinkwater, still a reasonable price there. Purdue goes back to the centres. Still think Dearden's a fun pick if you want to go there, and I would look at none of the forwards. So that's the team list Tuesday, guys. For round 23, 5 rounds to go. Sorry about the mic. Super exciting there. We will get into the best buys, and I know a lot of people are running out of trades, and if you have completely run out of trades, or if you're looking to use your final trades wisely, I do appreciate you guys watching all the way through. If you continue going through the end of the season, you will learn a lot, and you can store that information away in your brains for next year as well, for this back end of the season, as to how to manage it really well, and potentially how to not manage it very well also, like you've experienced now. If you've had heaps of unluckiness with injuries and stuff, it'll help you learn how to manage it a bit better, and hopefully you get some luck next year and you have extra trades available and can do some fun things when guys like Latrell Mitchell and these types of players pop up. So thanks so much for joining in for this one, guys, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the Best Buys video.